Hi, I'm Max Robinson. I help physically challenged men become more masculine. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Motability scheme again. I actually made this video about 3 weeks ago, but I didn't have enough space on my hard drive, so I've had to make room for it. And in the next couple of months, maybe there won't be such frequent videos where I'm talking to the camera like this because I don't have much memory left on my hard drive. I'm looking into getting a new one, but videos will be more frequent after November, let's say. But getting into this one, I'm not sure if I said it before, but my C-Class, which I've spoken about in my previous videos, which I said was the perfect car, it actually got written off, so I don't have that car anymore. So I've had to look for a new car, of course. I'm still currently using the courtesy car from Enterprise, the CLA, which is doing a good enough job. It's more than good enough vehicle. I try to find a vehicle like a Mercedes so I don't have to use my left hand because of my cerebral palsy, right, which I've said before. So I've looked around, and the only car on the scheme still that is anything like a Mercedes is the VW ID cars, and currently there's the VW ID3 and the VW ID4. I was looking at the 4 for myself because it's an SUV, so it's higher up off the ground, so it's easier for me to get in and out of. And in my previous video I made about the gear sticks, I spoke about the VW ID5, and I think the price was around £7,000 advance payment or something like that, which I said at the time was much too expensive 6 months ago. Now the ID3 and the ID4 are more affordable. They're both under £3,000, but that's still obviously quite expensive. That's I mean, I got my C-Class for £3,000, so yeah, they're not on par with a C-Class. So the thing about the ID vehicles is that they are electric. There are many pros and cons to electric vehicles. I'm going to be talking about that in a bit. But the other electric vehicle that I looked into was the Jeep Avenger. I was quite excited when I saw that Jeep was on the scheme because they weren't on the scheme before, to my knowledge at least, in the last 6 months, let's say. Maybe they were in the last 3 months, I'm not too sure. But so I saw that the Jeep Avenger was on the scheme, and I saw that it had buttons which you can press. It would be with your left hand though, in the center console, right? And I thought that might be an alternative for me and for other people which have trouble using a gear stick. But in actuality, when I test drove it, it was very, very hard for me to use the buttons. I'll put a clip in of what it was like for me. I've just test driven the Jeep Avenger, which is a small electric car, and I quite like the look of it. The dash is nice and easily visible. The Sat Nav, it can be voice activated with this button here, and that also applies to the music, which is great, which means I won't have to use my left hand. The parking, reverse and drive are here, buttons which are not ideal. It's much smaller of a car than I thought it would be. Behind me there's not really much room at all in the back here. It's got the phone charging, wireless phone charging here as well, which is great. The parking brake is automatic when you pull away and when you stop as well, so you don't even have to press that at all. It happens automatically. So yeah, the buttons were quite difficult to use. I went over a couple of other things as well. One thing I will say is that Jeep tried selling me the entertainment package because I stated that one of my essentials that I would need is a Sat Nav, right? So they said, oh yeah, if you want the Sat Nav, you need to pay £500 for the entertainment package. And I'm like, oh okay, cool. So I looked into that. But since then, I've realized that you don't actually need a Sat Nav these days, because Google Maps or Waze does arguably a better job than the Sat Navs, because both of those apps are updated more regularly than if you were to go and manually update your Sat Nav. Jeep were trying to sell me as if like, oh, you need it Like they could have just said, oh, actually, the car has CarPlay, and you can use Google Maps. But they didn't say that. I had to find it out off my own back. But so now that I know that a sat nav isn't a requirement, because most of the cars, I think pretty much all of the cars that I looked at so far, they all have Apple CarPlay. It's standard on most cars these days, right? And if your car has Apple CarPlay and you have an iPhone or an Android, you can use Google Maps or Waze. If you have a Google phone, Google phones aren't compatible with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So if you have a Google phone, you might need to consider getting a sat nav. But other than that, a sat nav isn't an essential thing for anyone anymore because, like I said, Google Maps and Waze do arguably a better job. So the biggest issue, obviously, with electric cars is the range of them, and the fact of having to charge the battery can take a large amount of time, right? So if you are considering an electric car for yourself, the main thing to think about is how much you drive and if the range of the car is suitable for you. So when I asked about the range of Jeep and the VW cars, I got it on my screen here. So the maximum distance that they give you is 260 to 320 miles. That's what they say when you ask them, right? But these stats are optimized, right? So they're probably done in a lab under the perfect conditions to get that 320 miles. So on one full charge, the most it can do in perfect conditions is 320 miles, right? So you need to take that with a grain of salt and say, okay, so maybe 260 is more likely the limit of if I'm using a car day to day, right? So once you know the range of what the electric car can go, calculate to yourself, okay, so if the maximum range on a full battery is around 260 miles, how many miles do I drive a month? That's the first question to ask yourself, right? So I've done this for myself, and I just look at my notes again here. So work out what you do daily. For me, all I do day to day is a 10-minute journey to the gym. Well, 5 minutes to the gym, 5 minutes back, right? So that's 3.4 miles. And then once a month I go to my dad's house, which is an hour and a half journey total, which I worked out was 38 miles. You can work all this out for yourself, by the way, by using Google Maps. It's very, very simple. You just type in your postcode of your home address, your postcode of your work or your hospital or wherever you go, right? And it will give you the miles, and then just double it because you're going there and back, right? Work this out for yourself so you can calculate if an electric car is actually feasible and a practical option for yourself. And then once a month I do a random journey for myself, which I gave myself another 40 miles for. So I added all of these together, 3.5 miles every day, so that's 30 days in a month, plus 38 miles to my dad's and back. Where is it? Plus 20 miles for my hospital appointment that I go to on average once a month, right? And then plus 40 miles for myself, the random journey that I give myself every month. So it came to 203 miles on average that I drive every month. Okay, so that, the whole point of this, right? 203 miles is within the limit of the 260 miles that the car can do on one charge, right? I don't drive a lot. Like, I only go to places that are necessary, apart from my once a month thing, which is me trying to push myself and do adventurous things for myself, right? So now that you've got your figure of how much you drive a month, and then that can give you the figure of how many times you need to charge per month, right? So for me, it means I only have to charge once a month on average, okay? So for you, if you need to charge 2 or 3 times a month, it might be a little bit less incentivizing for yourself to get an electric vehicle. But for me, charging once a month is not too bad. I can probably put up with, if I was to choose an electric vehicle, because nothing's decided yet, I could probably put up with charging once a month. So the next question to ask yourself if you're considering getting an electric vehicle is, how do I charge it? Motability have partnered with a company called Ohme, which is spelled OHME, and they, if you own your home, they'll come and install a electric charger at your home, but you need to have parking on your property. Like, you need to have a driveway, basically. I've got my disabled space, which is just at the back of my garden, and I phoned them and said, yeah, so I've got that, which is right there, and I explained to them that it's a space that was put there for me, but they said because it's on the street they won't install an electric charger. So that will probably be the case for you, right? So if you can't have an electric charger at your house, what's the alternative? The alternative is this system called BP Pulse. Motability will pay, I think it's £7.50 or around that per month subscription to BP Pulse. Motability will pay that for you every month for the duration of your lease, and with this it means that you get a discount when you use the BP Pulse network, and there's many charging points around the country where you can get discounted prices. So the thing that I done, and the thing that I recommend you do, is go and look around your local area. Go and look at every BP garage in your usual routes that you go on, right? For me, there was about 4 or 5 BP garages, but one BP petrol station in my area had an electric charge point, and luckily for me it had rapid charging too. So if I was to choose electric, because I've done my research and looked around, I know that that would be the place that I go to, and that would be the place that I charge my electric vehicle once a month, right? So you have to plan and look ahead. This is Magician energy, which I've spoken about before, right? I know that my Archetype videos haven't got nearly as many views as my Motability videos, but everything is linked, right? The Magician energy is all about creating systems for yourself, and when you create systems, everything is more streamlined. You can reach your goals at a much more efficient rate. So how difficult is it to actually charge the vehicle? This is a thing that I looked into too. If you're charging at home, it's a double-ended lead. Okay, so you pull out the lead, it's got one end that you plug into your car and one end that you plug into the wall socket, right? And it's not that indifferent from getting a pump at a petrol station, right? It's the same kind of weight as lifting it and using it. And when you have chronic pain, these are things that it's good to consider and look into. So if you're using the BP Pulse network, it's a little bit easier than the home double-ended lead. It's pretty much the same as filling up a petrol pump if you use the BP Pulse rapid charging station. It's get the lead one way and plug it into your vehicle. The same thing as a petrol, so it isn't any more difficult than going and filling up a petrol car. One last thing to say that is another incentive to consider getting an electric vehicle. If you do get electric, the price of electric is on average half the price of what petrol is. So that's one thing to consider, but I would argue that this is the last point to consider, the financial point, right? Because practicality and feasibility of going through pain is the most difficult thing and the most important thing to consider. If you've listened to everything that I've said so far and you're thinking, oh, an electric car doesn't really seem like an option for me at the moment, right? What are my other options if I want to drive a car without using my left hand? If I want to drive completely with my right side of my body? You can also look into getting an adaptation for your car. So I got a quote around 6 months ago, probably closer to a year ago actually, when I first started looking into these things, to make a car that has an automatic vehicle that has a regular gear stick. If you want to make it so that gear stick is no longer there, and you want the gears to be over here, like on all Mercedes cars or like on the VW ID cars, the cost of just that adaptation is £2,300. That's what I got quoted. Now that's a lot of money, because this is separate to your advance payment. So if you want a car that drives like a Mercedes, you need to pay the advance payment for that car and pay £2,300 minimum. That's what I got quoted. It can vary though, depending on the car. That's what you have to pay to have a car that's like a Mercedes. So that's why I've spoken before about Mercedes being the best option on the market, and why I still believe it definitely should come back to Motability, because look at how much it can help specifically disabled drivers, right? Very, very helpful. So because of the price of that, I'm actually looking into financial help and looking to apply for a grant, because I don't have those funds available at the moment. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, because there is one more option. If your lease isn't due to expire till about mid-2024, there is another option, which is the Skoda 2024 Kodiaq that isn't released yet, which is going to be released in Q1 of 2024. That actually has gears like a Mercedes. I was amazed when I saw this. I'll link the video in the description and the channel, right, that I saw it on. But yeah, the 2024 Skodas are coming in with the gears like the Mercedes. It just shows how far ahead Mercedes are, because like I said in a previous video, I had my C-Class for 6 years, and before that I had my A-Class for 3 years. So that's 9 years of me driving with the gears here. Mercedes have had this option for minimum the last 9 years, right? And only now are other manufacturers starting to catch on with this kind of model. So the Skoda, I was speaking to a Skoda salesman because I was looking at getting the Kodiaq for myself, which again I'll talk about later. So the Skoda salesman said that as a rule of thumb, if a vehicle gets released brand new to the market, it takes on average about 6 months for that vehicle to be on the Motability scheme. So like I said, you're looking at mid 2024 to late 2024 for Skoda cars to have this option of the gears. And it won't be all of the cars. The Scala and the Superb are going to have this Mercedes setup. Currently the Scala is on the scheme, the Superb isn't. That's along with the Kodiaq, right? So the Scala, the Superb and the Kodiaq are all getting updated in 2024 with the Mercedes setup, for want of a better word, because that's basically what it is, right? Mercedes were the first that I knew of to have this thing. The Kodiaq, on the other hand, which is the car that I've been looking at, that won't be updated until 2026. So it isn't the entire range of cars, it's just a specific few cars, but at least there is this option coming more than it is currently on the scheme. The next thing I'm going to talk about is ease of use and test drives. So when you've decided on a car that fits your essentials, when you've decided, oh, this car is a good option for me to try out, the next thing to consider is ease of use. How easy is it going to be for me to use every single day? So you want to look at the minor features rather than the macro features, right? So like I was just speaking about, I was looking at the Skoda Kodiaq because it's an SUV, it's high off the ground, and I'm going to put a clip in of me and my initial thoughts of the Skoda while I was on my test drive. So this is just my initial impressions. I'm currently test driving the Skoda Kodiaq, and it seems pretty good at the moment. I've just taken it onto an A road and put it in sport mode and driven it. It seems quite responsive, and the steering is lighter than I expected, which is good. It's not as powerful as the car that I'm driving at the moment, but that's what I expected because this is a 1.5 litre. The speedometer is very easily visible, unlike the CLA, which is the courtesy car that I'm driving. I've got Google Maps up just to show that what that looks like. I'm going to be using Google Maps going forwards rather than a Sat Nav, because I always have trouble with my Sat Nav, and my friends say that Google Maps is better, so that's what I'm going to be doing. It's quite a big screen. Currently it has this gear stick, which is very difficult for me to use with cerebral palsy, but I'm just about able to use it. I've got my foot on the brake, but it's like dragging the thing down through the gears. It's very difficult, so I'm not going to be doing that. Hopefully I'm going to be able to get this car adapted, and that will be the reason if I choose to buy it or not. But out of all of the gear sticks that I looked at, that are regular gear sticks, this is the best one. Again, still massively inconvenient, and won't be using it if I can help it. We'll see how that goes. One thing that I wanted to look at when I was test driving this was the ability to change the menus, like with the Sat Nav. You can activate your phone if you hold down, this is the LoRa button here, this one, and again it's quite hard to do with cerebral palsy. You have to, if you hold this down for about 3 seconds to activate Siri on your phone, and then you can tell Siri whatever you want. Like for example, for me, I was using it to play my Spotify playlists, and it worked. It responds well to that. And if you want to change tracks while listening to your Spotify, you can press this plus and minus, these two here, to change the tracks. On my C-Class, I had a dial down here, which was easier for me to use because it was a big item that I could just like back and forth like that. So that was perfect for me. But these are the kind of ease of use things that I'm going to be looking at going forwards with the other cars that I'm going to look at. I'm trying to determine which car is going to be the most practical for me to use on a day-to-day basis. So in that little clip I went over a few of the things that I was considering for ease of use, but I'm going to go over it in a little bit more detail now. So I'm going to put up on the screen a screenshot of my spreadsheet that I was using to decide on the best of my options available to me at the moment, right? So you can see here under ease of use, initially I've got the start button. Where is it, right? Is it on the left or the right of the steering wheel? If it's on the left, like it is on my CLA, it can be quite difficult to press, okay? So ideally you want the start button to be on the right if you're predominantly right-handed. Then you want to look at, is the parking brake automatic? Does it come on and off automatically? These are questions you can ask your dealer, right? Most cars have Apple CarPlay, but can you control it with your voice? I believe in one of my videos that I'm going to put in one of the clips, I've got an actual clip of the CarPlay working. But with the voice activation systems, if you hold the button for 1 second, that will take you to the car's activation system, whether that be Mercedes Me or the Skoda's LoRa or whatever the other manufacturers call their things, right? But if you hold the button down for 3 seconds, that activates Siri on your phone through the CarPlay. So wherever the button is, if you hold that button down for 3 seconds, you can get Siri on your phone, and that means you can access anything that your phone would be able to access. So you want to decide, where is that button on my car, and how easy is that button for me to use? Because that, if you use Siri, and like I said, you can do anything that your phone's going to do, that's the button that is going to be the most convenient to use, for you to use all the time. After that, you can ask yourself, how easy is it for you to navigate the regular menus of the car? If you, for some reason, okay, so if you have a Google phone, for example, and you can't use Apple CarPlay, how easy is it for you to use the menus on the car? Where is the sport button? How easy is it for you to use that? Does the car have wireless phone charging? Yes or no? Because that means that you won't have to be in pain using your hand to plug in the little lead, right? All of these things most people won't consider, but when you have chronic pain in your hands or legs or both, like me, these things might seem minor, but really, if you think about it, if you're using the car every single day, it can come to a lot of added pain that you can eliminate off the bat. The next thing to say is, does the car have an electric boot? The button to press to make the boot come down. And then give yourself space. Make your own spreadsheet. That's what I meant to say at the beginning. So make your own spreadsheet like mine and do this exercise for yourself to assess your options and then choose the best option that you have available, right? Give yourself an extra line of extra things to add at the end. So now I'm going to put in a clip of my CLA and I go over a few things in that clip. So I just let that one play. So I just finished my test drive with the VW ID4 and it's a higher up car, which is better for me than this CLA. The main problem I've found with this CLA, which is my courtesy car, is that it's really low down, so getting in and out of the car is like really difficult because it's very low to the ground, and also there's no top of the door, so by habit, which isn't a very good habit, I always tend to like grab the top of the door and then pull myself up, but you can't do that in this one because there is no top of the door to do that with. So that's why I'm looking at getting higher up cars, which are easier to get in and out of and more practical than this one. But anyway, I was just on my test drive and I was trying to figure out on the VW, because it has the gears like this over here, right? The ID cars. I was trying to figure out how to use the navigation system, and on the VW you actually have to double tap over here if you want to change the music, and I'll put a picture on the screen of what that looks like. And there's a button here which is the voice activation button for activating Siri on your phone. So like I've said before, what I'm looking at now that I know the cars that I'm test driving have the essentials of what I'm looking for, the next thing I do is I look for which car is the easiest for me to use, where I don't have to use my left hand, if possible at all. So since finding out, because on my test drive, the guy that was with me in the car, he didn't even know, we couldn't figure out how to change it. We were tapping the button once to change the track and nothing was happening. And then his colleague had to come after the test drive and figure it out that you have to double tap to change the track, right? So since then I've got back in this CLA and I started playing around with it, and I realized that this button here is actually a touch sensitive. That's the thing in these new cars that I'm not used to at all, because my C-Class was a 2017 car, right? So anyway, this is touch sensitive. So I figured out how to make this dashboard area more customizable than what it was. But you know what I still can't figure out? I still can't figure out how to make the speedometer big. And you know, like obvious in the middle, like it should be. Like I want to put it where my music is currently, right? But I can't figure out how to do that. But the plus side of it, having the music there, is that you can change your music with your right hand in this car. right? Which, like I've said, if you have cerebral palsy in your left hand, I know that's very specific, but if you want to use your right hand more than your left hand regardless, because your right hand is your dominant hand for most people, right? Then you can change the music. Now that I've got it on this display here, I can change the music with my right hand, because this right hand side of the steering wheel controls this screen, like in most cars, right? And the left hand side of the steering wheel, for the most part in most cars also, controls this screen here, right? So when you test drive cars and you look for ease of use, there are ways which you can make it possibly to use your right hand more than your left. So now that I've driven quite a different range of cars on the scheme now, hatchbacks, saloons, coupes, and I've test driven SUVs too. Now, if I was to choose my dream car to come back onto Motability at the moment, it would be a Mercedes GLC, because that car is an SUV, high off the ground, has the gears on the right hand side like I need. That is my dream car, right? That would be perfect. The Mercedes GLC, I think that would sell really well if it was on the Motability scheme. And if not a GLC, a GLA would be almost as good. Maybe not so many ease of use things in a GLA as a GLC, but yes, the main features, very, very good. So lastly, I'll give you guys a bonus tip. So in one of my past videos, I said that Motability do absolutely everything, right? They cover your insurance, your road tax, your service, your MOT, everything. So you don't have to worry about anything. I've said that before. This isn't strictly the case, okay? So there's one thing that I actually didn't realize, or I actually forgot about, because I had my C-Class for so long, for 6 years, right? So when my C-Class went in for, when I thought the C-Class was going into repairs, when I got my CLA through Enterprise, right, I presumed that my exemption from the congestion charge would be carried over to that car, because Motability do everything, right? So I presumed that that would be the case. They would just transfer over my exemption from congestion charge over to my new car. That's not the case. You need to manually do that. Go onto the TfL website and manually register your new hire car or your new car that you get through Motability to be exempt from congestion charge, and that's a £10 one-time payment, which is a very, very, very good deal. I mistakenly didn't do this, so I actually took my CLA into London. I went to help my dad, and I drove through a very small area with a congestion sign on the floor, right? And I got charged for it, and because Enterprise owned the vehicle, they said, oh, on top of this £90, we're going to charge you a £35 admin fee also. So because of my mistake, I got charged £125. I actually contested this through TfL, and TfL accepted this, so I didn't actually have to pay the £90. And then Enterprise, shout out to them again, they said that as a gesture of goodwill, they wouldn't charge me the admin fee either. So thankfully I got away with that, but I hope that this helps anyone that might be in such a situation, right? That might have a courtesy car that they drive through London, or even if it's your new car, like I said, make sure that you get them exempt from the congestion charge before going to London. Pay the £10. It's not that much money, right? So that's the end of the video. I hope that you found this helpful.
And always remember,
life is good, but it can be better.